Marcus Chan had always been good with children, but he never expected that skill to work on alien kids too. The small figure huddled behind the massive shipping container looked so impossibly sad that his heart ached just watching her. The trading station orbiting Kepler 442b buzzed with activity as usual. Merchants from dozens of species hawked their wares. Diplomats conducted hushed negotiations, and freight workers moved cargo with practiced efficiency. Marcus had been working here for 3 years as a human liaison, helping smooth over the cultural misunderstandings that inevitably arose when so many different civilizations tried to do business together. But this little girl was different from anything he'd encountered before. She stood barely 3 feet tall, with iridescent blue-green skin that shimmered like oil on water. Her large violet eyes held an intelligence that seemed far older than her apparent age. 4 delicate arms hung at her sides, and gossamer wings drooped behind her like wilted flower petals. She wore what looked like a simple gray tunic that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. Marcus had noticed her 3 days ago, always alone, always watching the other species with a longing that transcended language barriers. She never approached anyone, never spoke, just observed with those haunting eyes. Today she looked particularly forlorn. Setting down his datapad, Marcus walked slowly toward her hiding spot. He'd learned that sudden movements often spooked alien children, regardless of species. The little girl tensed as he approached, ready to flee, but something in his gentle demeanor made her pause. "Hello there," he said softly, crouching down to her eye level. "I'm Marcus. I've seen you around here a few times." She tilted her head, studying him with curious intensity. When she spoke, her voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "You are the human who helps with words? I help people understand each other, yes. What's your name?" "Zira." She pronounced it with a musical lilt that made it sound like a song. "I am waiting for my mother to finish her work." "That must be boring, waiting all by yourself." Zira's wings drooped even lower. "Other children do not play with me. They say I'm strange." Marcus felt a familiar pang of sympathy. He'd been the odd kid out plenty of times growing up, always more interested in books than sports, more comfortable with adults than his peers. "Why do they think you're strange?" "Because I ask too many questions. Because I like to learn about other species. Because I dream of flying between the stars instead of staying safe on our homeworld." The words tumbled out in a rush, as if she'd been storing them up for someone who might actually listen. Marcus smiled, recognizing a kindred spirit. "Those don't sound strange to me. They sound wonderful." Zira's eyes widened with surprise. "Really? Really? Some of the best humans I know are curious about everything and dream of exploring the universe." For the first time since he'd been watching her, Zira smiled. It transformed her entire face, making those violet eyes sparkle with joy. Her wings even perked up slightly. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small object he'd been carrying for weeks. It was a simple toy gyroscope. One of those old-fashioned spinning tops that defied gravity through physics rather than technology. His niece had given it to him before he left Earth, saying it would remind him of home. "Would you like to see something interesting?" he asked, holding up the gyroscope. Zira nodded eagerly, her 4 hands clasping together in front of her chest. Marcus set the gyroscope spinning on his palm, where it balanced impossibly, rotating faster and faster until it seemed to glow with its own inner light. Zira gasped in delight, her wings fluttering with excitement. "How does it stay up?" she breathed, reaching out tentatively with one delicate finger. "It's called angular momentum. The spinning creates a force that resists gravity." He carefully transferred the still spinning top to her smallest hand. "Here, you try." Zira held the gyroscope like it was made of precious crystal, watching in wonder as it continued to spin and balance. Her face lit up with pure joy and she laughed, a sound like silver bells ringing in harmony. "It's magic," she exclaimed. "It's science," Marcus corrected gently. But sometimes the two aren't so different. They spent the next hour playing with the gyroscope, Marcus explaining the physics while Zira asked question after question, with the insatiable curiosity of a born explorer. She was incredibly bright, grasping complex concepts with ease and making connections that impressed even Marcus. When the gyroscope finally began to slow, Zira looked up at him with shining eyes. "Thank you for showing me this wonderful thing." "You can keep it," Marcus said impulsively. The joy on her face was worth more than any childhood memento. "Consider it a gift from one curious soul to another." Zira's wings spread wide with surprise and delight. You would give this to me? But it is yours. The best gifts are the ones we share, Marcus told her. Besides, I think it will be happier with someone who appreciates its magic. Carefully cradling the gyroscope in her 4 hands, Zira stood up straighter than he'd ever seen her. I will treasure it always, she promised solemnly. And I will remember the human who was kind to a strange little girl. Before Marcus could respond, a melodious voice called out across the trading floor. Zira, where are you, little star? The child's eyes went wide. That is my mother. I must go. She clutched the gyroscope to her chest and smiled up at Marcus one more time. Thank you, Marcus Chen. You have given me more than just a toy. With that cryptic statement, she scampered away through the crowd, her wings catching the station's artificial light like stained glass. Marcus watched her go, feeling strangely moved by the encounter. There had been something profound in her words, something that suggested this simple act of kindness might ripple outward in ways he couldn't imagine. He had no idea how right he was. As he returned to his workstation, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn towards something extraordinary. The gyroscope had been a simple toy and Zira just a lonely child. But sometimes the smallest gestures created the biggest changes. Tomorrow would prove that beyond any doubt. Marcus was reviewing trade manifests the next morning when his workstation chimed with an incoming priority message. The sender's identification made him pause. It was from someone called High Navigator Lirelai of the Celestial Winds Consortium. The message was brief but formal. Honored human Marcus Chen, please join me in private conference chamber 7 at your earliest convenience. I believe we have much to discuss. He'd never heard of this High Navigator before, but the Celestial Winds Consortium was legendary throughout this sector. They were master shipbuilders and navigators, their vessels capable of crossing vast distances that would take other species months or years. Their technology was so advanced that most governments paid handsomely just for the privilege of using their trade routes. Curiosity overriding his usual caution, Marcus made his way through the station's gleaming corridors to the exclusive conference level. Chamber 7 was reserved for high-level diplomatic meetings, its walls lined with panels displaying real-time views of the cosmos beyond. The being waiting for him took his breath away. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with the same iridescent blue-green skin as little Zira, but bearing herself with the grace and authority of royalty. Her forearms moved with practiced elegance, and her gossamer wings, fully extended, created a magnificent canopy behind her. She wore flowing robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, shifting between silver and deep purple with every movement. But it was her eyes that truly captured Marcus's attention. They were the same violet shade as Zira's, filled with ancient wisdom and unmistakable warmth. You are Marcus Chen, she said, her voice carrying the same musical quality as her daughter's, but with harmonics that seemed to resonate in his very bones. I am High Navigator Lirelai, and I believe you have met my daughter. The pieces clicked together in Marcus's mind. Zira is your daughter, but she seemed so... He stopped himself before saying abandoned or neglected. Lonely? Lirelai finished gently. Yes, I know. The burden of my position requires extensive travel, and Zira often accompanies me to trading stations and diplomatic meetings. It is not an easy life for a child, especially one as curious and spirited as she. Marcus nodded, understanding flooding through him. She mentioned that other children think she's strange. My people, the Etherian, value tradition and stability above all else. Zira's fascination with other species and her dreams of exploration are seen as unconventional. Lirelai's wings rustled with what Marcus interpreted as frustration. Many believe she should focus on more suitable pursuits for one of her station. Her station? She is my heir, destined to inherit command of our fleet and the navigation secrets passed down through our bloodline for millennia. Lirelai moved to the viewing panels, gazing out at the stars. But leadership cannot be taught through duty alone. It requires understanding, compassion, and the ability to see beyond one's own perspective. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he began to grasp the significance of yesterday's encounter. The gyroscope? Yes. Lirelai turned back to him, her eyes shining with an emotion Marcus couldn't quite identify. Zira came to me last night clutching your gift and speaking of the kind human who had shown her wonders and treated her not as the future High Navigator, but simply as a curious child. She has not stopped talking about angular momentum and the magic of science. It was just a toy, Marcus said, feeling overwhelmed. I saw a lonely kid and wanted to cheer her up. Just a toy, Lyra Lee repeated, amusement clear in her voice. Do you know what that toy represents to my daughter? Marcus shook his head. For the first time in her young life, someone saw her for who she truly is rather than what she will become. You encouraged her questions instead of dismissing them. You shared knowledge freely without expecting anything in return. Lyra Lee approached him, her presence both commanding and oddly comforting. You treated her with the dignity and respect that every being deserves, regardless of age or status. Any decent person would have done the same. Would they? Lyra Lee's expression grew thoughtful. In my extensive travels, I have encountered many species, many individuals who claim to value compassion and understanding. Yet most are quick to ignore those they perceive as beneath them or different from themselves. Yesterday you proved that humans possess something truly remarkable. She moved to a panel on the wall and pressed her palm against it. The surface shimmered, revealing a holographic display of the most beautiful starship Marcus had ever seen. It was sleek and organic looking, as if it had been grown rather than built, with flowing lines that suggested both speed and grace. Crystalline structures along its hull pulsed with soft light, and gossamer thin energy sails unfurled from its sides like wings. This is the Star Whisper, Lyra Lee announced. She is one of our finest vessels, capable of traversing the galaxy in a fraction of the time required by conventional ships. Her navigation systems can plot courses through hyperspace that others cannot even detect, and her hull can withstand the stresses of dimensional folding. Marcus stared at the hologram, unable to process what he was seeing. She's incredible. She is yours. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, certain he had misheard. I'm sorry, what? The Star Whisper is yours, Marcus Chen, along with full training in her operation and access to our navigation networks. Lyra Lee's voice was calm and matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather rather than offering him technology worth more than most planets. But, why, I don't understand. I just gave your daughter a spinning top. You gave my daughter hope, Lyra Lee corrected. You showed her that there are beings in this universe who value curiosity over conformity, who choose kindness over indifference. In doing so, you reminded me why we explore the stars in the first place, not for profit or territory, but for the connections we make along the way. Marcus's mind reeled. I can't accept this. It's too much. I'm nobody special, just a diplomatic aide who happened to be in the right place at the right time. That is precisely why you deserve it. Lyra Lee's eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. The universe has a way of testing us when we least expect it. Yesterday you passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. But what would I do with a starship? I don't know the first thing about interstellar navigation or... You will learn, Lyra Lee interrupted gently. Just as you learned to see past my daughter's loneliness to the bright spirit beneath. Just as you learned to share knowledge without expectation of reward. The skills can be taught, Marcus Chen. Character cannot. She gestured toward the hologram where the Star Whisper rotated slowly in all its magnificent glory. Besides, I suspect you have your own dreams of exploration that you have kept carefully hidden. Am I wrong? Marcus felt his cheeks burn. It was true. He'd always dreamed of seeing the galaxy beyond the confines of trading stations and diplomatic meetings. He'd studied stellar cartography in his spare time, read everything he could about distant worlds and alien civilizations. But those had been private fantasies never spoken aloud. How did you know? The same way you knew that Zira needed a friend, rather than a lecture about proper behavior. Lyra Lee smiled, transforming her regal features into something warm and approachable. Recognition calls to recognition, Marcus Chen. I see in you the same wanderlust that drives my people across the void. The weight of the offer settled on Marcus's shoulders like a mantle of starlight. This was a chance to live his deepest dreams, to explore wonders beyond imagination, but it also felt too enormous, too generous for such a simple act of kindness. Why does this feel like the beginning of something much bigger than either of us? He asked quietly. Lyra Lee's smile widened. Because it is. Marcus spent the next 3 days in a state of surreal disbelief. High Navigator Lyra Lee had given him time to consider her offer, but the Star Whisper remained docked at the station's premium berths, waiting for his decision like a patient silver dream. He'd tried to research the Etherian culture, but information was surprisingly scarce. They were known as master navigators and shipbuilders, but their society remained largely mysterious to outsiders. What little he could find suggested a rigid, caste system based on hereditary roles, with the high navigators forming something like a royal family that had guided their people across the stars for thousands of years. On the third evening, as Marcus sat in the station's observation deck watching the Star Whisper gleam in the reflected light of the nearby star, Zira appeared beside him, as if materialized from thin air. "Hello, Marcus Chen," she said, settling onto the bench beside him with her small legs swinging. The gyroscope spun lazily in her lower left hand while her other 3 hands gestured expressively as she spoke. "Hello, Zira. Shouldn't you be with your mother? She is in meditation, speaking with the ancestors about important things." Zira's violet eyes sparkled with mischief. "I thought you might want to know why she really offered you the Star Whisper." Marcus turned to face her fully. "I thought it was because I was kind to you. That is part of it, but not all." Zira's expression grew serious, far too mature for her apparent age. "Do you know the story of the first navigator?" Marcus shook his head. "Long ago, when my people first learned to travel between stars, we were not the wise explorers you see today. We were frightened, suspicious, convinced that every other species wanted to harm us." Zira made the gyroscope spin faster, its hum creating a soothing background to her words. The first navigator was different. She believed that the universe was vast enough for everyone, that diversity made us stronger rather than weaker. What happened to her? She was exiled for her beliefs. The council said she was too trusting, too willing to share our secrets with aliens. Zira's wings drooped slightly. But before she left, she made a prophecy. She said that one day her people would encounter a species that embodied the virtues she had tried to teach: compassion without agenda, curiosity without conquest, generosity without expectation of return. When that day came, the Etherean would know it was time to rejoin the greater galactic community. Marcus felt goosebumps rise on his arms. "And your mother thinks humans are that species?" "Not all humans," Zira said carefully. "But you showed me the spinning toy not because you wanted something from me, not because you knew who my mother was, but simply because you saw a lonely child and wanted to help." That is exactly what the first navigator described in her prophecy. The implication struck Marcus like a thunderbolt. This isn't just about me, is it? This is about establishing contact between our species. Zira nodded solemnly. Mother has been traveling the galaxy for years, observing humans in secret. She has seen both your greatest achievements and your darkest failures. Most species, when they discover our existence, immediately try to negotiate trade agreements or military alliances. They see opportunity before they see friendship. But I didn't even know who you were when I gave you the gyroscope. Exactly. Zira's eyes lit up with delight. You saw a person, not a political opportunity. You shared knowledge freely, without trying to extract our secrets in return. You treated me as an equal despite our obvious differences in species, age, and status. Marcus leaned back against the bench, his mind reeling. So the Starship isn't really a gift, it's a test. It is both, Zira said thoughtfully. Mother genuinely wants to reward your kindness, but she also wants to see what you will do with such power. Will you use it responsibly? Will you maintain the same values that led you to help a lonely alien child? Or will having advanced technology change you into something else? The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a lead blanket. This wasn't just about his personal dreams anymore. It was about representing his entire species to an advanced civilization that had been watching them from the shadows. What if I fail? What if I make mistakes? Zira stopped the gyroscope and held it still in her palm, studying its frozen geometry. The first navigator said that the worthy species would not be perfect, but they would learn from their errors and grow stronger because of them. Perfection is stagnation, Marcus Chen. Growth requires the courage to risk failure. You're very wise for someone so young. I am older than I appear, Zira said with a mysterious smile. My people mature differently than humans. In your years, I would be considered an adolescent. but I have been studying galactic cultures and navigation theory since I could speak. Mother says I have an old soul. Marcus looked out at the Star Whisper again, its elegant lines seeming to beckon him toward adventure and discovery. If I accept this gift, what happens next? You learn, Zira said simply. Mother will teach you to pilot the ship, to read the hyperspace currents, to navigate by stellar harmonics. You will visit worlds that humans have never seen, meet species that your people do not yet know exist. And eventually, when you are ready, you will return to Earth as an ambassador between our peoples. And if your people decide that humans aren't worthy after all? Zira's expression grew sad. Then we will continue our isolation, and both our species will be poorer for it. The galaxy is vast, Marcus Chen, but it can also be very lonely. My people have forgotten that connection is what makes existence meaningful. She stood up from the bench, the gyroscope resuming its gentle spin in her hand. But I do not think that will happen. You have already proven that humans possess the qualities the first navigator valued most. The question is whether you have the courage to embrace your destiny. With that, she skipped away into the crowded corridors, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the impossible decision before him. As he sat there watching the stars wheel slowly past the observation windows, Marcus thought about his life before this moment. He'd been content enough, helping resolve minor disputes and facilitating trade agreements. But contentment and fulfillment were different things entirely. The Star Whisper represented everything he'd ever dreamed of: freedom, adventure, the chance to explore the infinite wonders of the universe. But it also represented responsibility on a scale he'd never imagined. The decisions he made wouldn't just affect his own life, but potentially the future relationship between two civilizations. Yet when he thought about Zira's lonely eyes brightening with joy over a simple spinning toy, when he remembered the profound gratitude in Lyrelai's voice, he realized that the choice had already been made in his heart. Some gifts were too precious to refuse, not because of their material value, but because of what they represented. The Star Whisper wasn't just a ship. It was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of the connections that could be forged when beings chose understanding over fear. Standing up from the bench, Marcus took one last look at the vessel that would carry him toward his destiny. Tomorrow, he would find High Navigator Lyrelai and accept her extraordinary offer. Tonight, he would say goodbye to the small, safe life he'd known. The galaxy was waiting, vast and full of wonders beyond imagination. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen felt truly ready to explore it. Marcus found Lyrelai in the station's botanical gardens the next morning, sitting in peaceful meditation beneath a flowering tree from her homeworld. The delicate blossoms chimed like bells in the artificial breeze, creating a melody that seemed to resonate with her gentle breathing. "I accept," he said simply. Lyrelai's eyes opened, and she smiled with genuine warmth. "I hoped you would. Zira spoke with you yesterday, I assume." "She's remarkable. You both are." Marcus sat on the grass beside her, feeling strangely at peace despite the magnitude of his decision. "But I have to ask, what happens if I can't live up to your expectations? What if I'm not the ambassador you need me to be?" "Then we will learn from the experience and try again," Lyrelai replied, echoing her daughter's wisdom. The first Navigator taught us that failure is only truly failure if we refuse to grow from it. You have already shown the character we seek, Marcus Chen. The rest is simply education. She stood gracefully, her movements causing the chiming flowers to sing more vibrantly. "Come. It is time for you to meet your ship properly." The docking bay that housed the Star Whisper was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Instead of the usual harsh industrial lighting and metal grating, this space seemed almost alive. Bioluminescent panels provided soft, changing illumination that responded to their presence, and the air itself hummed with barely audible harmonics that made his skin tingle. But it was the ship itself that took his breath away. Up close, the Star Whisper was even more magnificent than the hologram had suggested. Her hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury, reflecting their approach with ripples of light. The crystalline structures along her sides pulsed with soft colors that reminded Marcus of aurora displays. and her gossamer energy sails rustled with their own inner wind. "She is beautiful," he whispered. "She is alive," Lyrelai corrected, "not in the way biological beings are alive, but conscious nonetheless. Etherian ships are grown from quantum crystalline matrices that develop their own personalities over time. The Star Whisper has been waiting 300 years for the right captain." As they approached the ship's boarding ramp, which extended toward them like a welcoming hand, Marcus felt a presence touch his mind. It was gentle and curious, like a cat investigating a new scent. Images flashed through his thoughts. Vast, nebulae painted in impossible colors, binary stars dancing their eternal waltz, ancient civilizations rising and falling among distant worlds. "She is greeting you," Lyrelai explained, noticing his startled expression. "The ship's consciousness wishes to know who you are, what drives you, whether you are compatible with her needs and desires." Marcus relaxed, allowing the presence to explore his memories and emotions. He felt her surprise at his kindness to Zira, her approval of his curiosity about the universe, her excitement at the prospect of finally having a captain who would appreciate the wonders they could discover together. The sensation faded gradually, leaving behind a sense of welcome and anticipation. "She accepts you," Lyrelai said with obvious pleasure. "I confess I was somewhat concerned. The Star Whisper has refused 12 previous candidates over the centuries, including 3 of my own family members. The ship's interior was even more extraordinary than her exterior. The corridors curved organically, their walls displaying real-time views of space that shifted and changed as they walked. The deck beneath their feet felt warm and slightly yielding, as if they were walking on living tissue. Soft music played, from no visible source, harmonics that seemed to respond to their emotions and conversation. "How does it all work?" Marcus asked, running his hand along a wall that rippled with responsive light. "Quantum crystalline technology merged with biological growth patterns," Lyrelai explained. "The ship exists partially in normal space, and partially in what you might call hyperspace. This allows her to manipulate local spacetime, effectively stepping between dimensions to achieve faster-than-light travel. They entered what was clearly the bridge, though it bore little resemblance to the command centers Marcus had seen on human vessels. Instead of chairs and control panels, there was a raised platform surrounded by floating crystal formations that pulsed with inner light. The walls displayed a 3-dimensional star map that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. "This is where you will learn to navigate," Lyrelai said, gesturing toward the platform. "Etherian ships respond to thought and emotion as much as physical commands. You must learn to harmonize with the ship's consciousness, to see the universe through her sensors, to feel the currents of hyperspace through her hull." Marcus stepped onto the platform, and immediately the star map shifted to focus on their current location. He could sense the massive trading station nearby, the gravitational pull of the distant planet, even the solar wind streaming from the system's star. It was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. "The learning curve will be steep," Lyrelai warned. "Most Etherians spend decades mastering basic navigation techniques. You will need to compress that training into months if you are to fulfill your role as ambassador." "How is that possible?" "Because you bring something unique to the process." Lyrelai moved to stand beside him on the platform. "Human neural patterns are more adaptable than ours. Where we learn through rigid tradition and careful practice, you can improvise and innovate. The ship's consciousness finds this fascinating." As if responding to her words, the Star Whisper's presence touched Marcus's mind again, this time sharing technical specifications and navigation principles directly. The information flowed into his consciousness like water filling a vessel, not overwhelming but comprehensive. He understood, suddenly and completely, how the ship's quantum drives worked, how to read hyperspace currents, how to plot courses through dimensional folds that conventional sensors couldn't detect. "Incredible," he breathed. "She's teaching me directly." "That is unprecedented," Lyrelai said, her voice filled with wonder. "Etherian ships typically require years of careful conditioning before they will share such knowledge. You truly are extraordinary, Marcus Chen." Over the following hours, Lyrelai guided him through the ship's various systems. The living quarters adapted to his presence, forming furniture that perfectly matched his height and preferences. The galley could synthesize any food he could. Imagine, drawing on a database of flavors and nutrients from across the galaxy. The observation deck provided views of space so clear and detailed that he could see the surface features of planets light years away. But it was the ship's library that truly captured his imagination. Instead of books or data files, knowledge was stored in crystalline formations that could project information directly into his mind. He touched one crystal and suddenly understood the poetry of a gas giant species that communicated through electromagnetic pulses. Another showed him the mathematical principles behind quantum consciousness, concepts so advanced that human science was still centuries away from discovering them. The accumulated knowledge of 1,000 civilizations, Lorelei said, watching him explore with obvious delight. The ship has been gathering information throughout her travels, creating the most comprehensive database in known space. This is more than just a ship, Marcus realized. She's a mobile university, a repository of everything the Etherian have learned in their explorations. Now you begin to understand why this gift is so significant. You are not just receiving a vessel, but access to the combined wisdom of ages. Lyralei's expression grew serious. With such knowledge comes great responsibility. How you use these gifts will determine not only your own fate, but the future relationship between our peoples. As the ship's day cycle wound toward evening, Marcus found himself in the captain's quarters, looking out at the stars through a wall that had become completely transparent at his unspoken wish. The star whisper hummed contentedly around him, her consciousness a warm presence at the edge of his thoughts. For the first time since Lorelei had made her incredible offer, Marcus felt truly ready for what lay ahead. The ship wasn't just a machine to be operated, but a partner to work with, a friend to share the journey. Together, they would explore wonders beyond imagination, and hopefully prove that humans were worthy of joining the greater galactic community. Tomorrow, they would begin their first voyage. Tonight, Marcus Chen allowed himself to dream of the infinite possibilities that awaited among the stars. Their first journey began at dawn, with Zira bouncing excitedly on the bridge while Lorelei ran through final system checks. Marcus stood on the navigation platform, feeling the Star Whisper's consciousness merge gradually with his own awareness. It was like learning to see through new eyes, to hear frequencies beyond human perception, to feel the subtle currents of space-time itself. "Where are we going?" he asked as the ship's engines hummed to life with a sound like singing crystals. "The maelstrom of echoing souls," Lorelei replied, her 4 hands dancing across floating control interfaces. "It is a region of space where several dimensional barriers have become thin, creating navigation hazards that challenge even experienced pilots. If you can learn to guide the Star Whisper through those currents, you will be ready for anything the galaxy can offer." Marcus felt his stomach drop. That sounds dangerous for a first lesson. "All worthwhile journeys involve some risk," Zira chimed in, her young voice filled with confidence. "Besides, the Star Whisper has never lost a passenger. She is very protective of those she cares about." As if responding to the compliment, the ship's consciousness brushed against Marcus's mind with what felt distinctly like affection. Images flashed through his thoughts. The view from the bridge as they lifted gracefully away from the trading station, the star field wheeling around them as they turned toward their destination, the gathering energies of the quantum drive as it prepared to fold spacetime. "Hold tight," Lorelei warned. "Translation to hyperspace can be disorienting for new travelers." The universe twisted around them like a kaleidoscope made of starlight. Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond the confines of his physical body, stretching across impossible distances as the ship stepped sideways through dimensions. For a moment that lasted eternity, he was everywhere and nowhere, his awareness scattered across the quantum foam that underlaid reality itself. Then they emerged into normal space, and Marcus found himself staring at a vista that defied description. The maelstrom of echoing souls stretched before them like a cosmic storm frozen in time. Streams of multicolored energy twisted through space, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Ghost images of stars and planets flickered in and out of existence, echoes of realities that might have been or could still be. The very fabric of space-time seemed to ripple and flow like water disturbed by an invisible hand. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered, And terrifying. The barrier between dimensions is especially thin here, Lyreley explained, her voice carrying a note of reverence. We can see glimpses of alternate realities, other timelines where history unfolded differently. Some of my people believe this is where lost souls come to find their way home. The Star Whisper moved forward slowly, her hull singing in harmony with the strange energies surrounding them. Marcus could feel the ship's consciousness probing carefully ahead, testing each current before committing to a course. The navigation required constant adjustments, responding to shifts in dimensional pressure that changed faster than thought. Now you try, Lyreley said, stepping back from the controls. Feel the currents through the ship's senses. Trust your instincts rather than your training. Marcus closed his eyes and opened his mind fully to the Star Whisper's awareness. Immediately he was overwhelmed by sensation. The push and pull of gravitational eddies, the singing of cosmic strings stretched tight between realities, the whisper of dark matter flowing like an invisible river through the chaos. Too much, he gasped, pulling back instinctively. Do not fight it, Zira advised from her perch on a crystal formation. Let the information flow through you rather than trying to hold on to it all. You are not a computer, Marcus Chen. You are a living being with intuition and creativity. Taking a deep breath, Marcus tried again. This time, instead of attempting to process every detail, he let the sensations wash over him like music. Patterns began to emerge from the chaos, rhythms in the energy flows, melodies in the dimensional harmonics, a vast symphony of forces that had been playing since the universe began. And suddenly he could see it, not with his eyes but with something deeper, a path through the maelstrom that no conventional navigation system could have detected, threading between realities like a needle through fabric. There, he said, pointing toward what looked like empty space. We can go that way. Lyreley checked her instruments, her violet eyes widening with surprise. How did you see that route? Our sensors detect nothing but chaotic interference in that direction. I don't know, Marcus admitted. It just feels right. Follow your instincts, Lyreley said after a moment. The ship trusts you. Marcus guided the Star Whisper along the path he had sensed, making constant minute adjustments as the currents shifted around them. The ship responded to his thoughts as much as his physical commands, dancing through the chaos with grace that surprised even her own consciousness. They were halfway through the maelstrom when everything went wrong. A cascade failure in the dimensional barriers sent shockwaves rippling through space-time, turning their carefully plotted course into a death trap of colliding realities. Energy streams that had been stable moments before began intersecting violently, creating zones of space where the laws of physics themselves seemed to break down. Emergency protocols activated. The ship's voice whispered directly into Marcus's mind, seeking escape vector, but there was nowhere to go. The chaos surrounded them completely, and conventional navigation was useless in the face of such unprecedented disturbance. We need to get out of here, Lyreley said urgently, her composed demeanor cracking for the first time since Marcus had known her. If we stay in this storm much longer, we risk being torn apart by the dimensional stresses. Marcus felt panic rising in his chest, but then something unexpected happened. The chaos around them began to make sense in a way that transcended logic. He could see patterns in the madness, connections between cause and effect that operated on principles entirely foreign to Etherian navigation techniques. What if we don't try to escape the storm? He said suddenly. What if we use it instead? That is impossible, Lyreley protested. No ship can harness such chaotic energies. Maybe no Etherian ship, Marcus replied, his mind racing with possibilities. But humans are good at improvising, at finding order in chaos, and the Star Whisper isn't entirely Etherian anymore. She's learning to think like I do. Without waiting for permission, Marcus opened his consciousness fully to the maelstrom's fury. The sensory overload was incredible, but instead of trying to organize or control it, he simply accepted it as it was. Chaos wasn't the absence of order. It was order too complex for conventional understanding. The Star Whisper's consciousness merged more completely with his own, and together they began to surf the dimensional storm like dancers riding a hurricane. They used the energy cascades to boost their speed, the gravitational eddies to change direction, the reality fluctuations to slip between layers of space-time in ways that should have been impossible. It was exhilarating and terrifying, requiring split-second decisions based on intuition rather than calculation. Marcus felt his awareness expand beyond anything he had thought possible, encompassing not just the ship in the storm, but the fundamental forces that shaped reality itself. When they finally emerged on the far side of the maelstrom, they had crossed a distance that should have taken hours in mere minutes. The Star Whisper practically hummed with satisfaction, her consciousness bright with excitement at having discovered entirely new forms of navigation. Incredible, Lyrelai breathed, staring at her instruments in disbelief. You just achieved something our greatest navigators have only theorized about. You rode the chaos itself. We rode it, Marcus corrected, patting the ship's control surface affectionately. I couldn't have done it alone. Zira clapped her 4 hands together in delight. You see? This is exactly what the first navigator meant. Humans do not think like other species. You find solutions where we see only problems. As they set course for their next destination, Marcus reflected on what had just happened. He was beginning to understand that human nature, their adaptability, their willingness to embrace uncertainty, their talent for creative problem-solving, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of challenges that required new ways of thinking. Perhaps that was why the Etherian had been waiting so long for first contact. They needed partners who could see possibilities where others saw only impossibilities. And maybe, just maybe, humanity was ready to become those partners. The distress signal reached them 3 days later, while Marcus was practicing advanced navigation techniques in a quiet corner of space. The message was barely coherent, transmitted on an emergency frequency that cut through the quantum static like a scream. Unknown vessel. Under attack. Children aboard. Engines failing. Please help. Marcus felt the Star Whisper's consciousness surge with alarm as the signal faded into static. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, he could detect the source. A massive transport vessel nearly 20 light minutes away, its energy signature fluctuating wildly. We have to help them, he said immediately. Lyrelai, who had been reviewing star charts in her meditation alcove, appeared on the bridge with concern etched across her features. That signal came from Korthak space. They are not a friendly species. They mention children, Marcus said firmly. Whatever our differences with their adults, innocent lives are at stake. The Korthak are raiders and slavers, Lyrelai explained, her voice heavy with distaste. They view compassion as weakness and diplomacy as cowardice. If we attempt to help, they will likely see it as an opportunity to capture an Etherian vessel. Then we don't tell them we're Etherian, Marcus replied, already plotting a course toward the distress signal. The Star Whisper can alter her appearance, right? Make herself look like a human ship? Zira, who had been listening from her favorite perch among the navigation crystals, spoke up excitedly. Mother, this is exactly what the first navigator would have done. She always said that true strength comes from helping those who cannot help themselves. Lyrelai hesitated, her trained caution warring with deeper principles. The risk is enormous, Marcus. If the Korthak discover who we really are, then we'll face that when it happens, Marcus said. But I won't let children die because we were too afraid to take a chance on doing the right thing. The ship's consciousness brushed against his mind, adding her own voice to the decision. Images flashed through his thoughts. Refugee families huddled in failing life support systems, small forms that could only be children pressed against viewport windows, desperately searching the stars for salvation. The Star Whisper agrees with me, Marcus said quietly. She's as troubled by their suffering as I am. Lyrelai closed her eyes for a long moment, then nodded with resignation. Very well, but we do this carefully, and we leave at the first sign of treachery. The journey to the distress signal took only minutes at the Star Whisper's incredible speeds. As they dropped out of hyperspace, Marcus gasped at the scene before them. A massive Korthak transport ship drifted helplessly in space, its hull scarred by weapon impacts and atmospheric breaches. 3 smaller vessels circled it like vultures, their sleek designs marking them as pirates from the Razor Fleet, criminals who preyed on the weak throughout this sector of space. Life signs? Marcus asked. Approximately 3,000 aboard the transport, Lyrelai reported, her voice grim. Many are weakening. The ship's life support is failing rapidly. As they watched, one of the pirate vessels fired a disabling shot into the transport's remaining engine, ensuring their victim couldn't escape. The pirates were clearly planning to board and take whatever they found valuable. including any survivors who could be sold as slaves. "Hail the pirate vessels," Marcus ordered. "Let me talk to them." The lead pirate ship responded with surprising quickness, perhaps curious about the newcomer's unusual design. The face that appeared on their communication screen was reptilian and scarred, with cold yellow eyes that seemed to calculate the worth of everything they looked upon. "I am Captain Scrix of the Bone Dancer," the pirate announced. "You will withdraw immediately or share the fate of these pathetic refugees." "I have a different proposal," Marcus said calmly. "Release the transport ship and leave this system, and I'll let you keep your lives." Scrix blinked in apparent surprise, then began laughing, a harsh, grating sound like metal being torn. "You threaten us? One small ship against three? You are either very brave or very stupid." "I prefer to think of it as confident," Marcus replied, "but I'm willing to demonstrate if you need convincing." The pirate captain's expression shifted to predatory interest. "Show me what your little toy ship can do, human. But know that when we finish with you, your crew will fetch a fine price on the slave markets." The communication cut off, and immediately the three pirate vessels began moving to attack positions. Marcus felt the Star Whisper's consciousness merge more fully with his own, her weapon systems coming online with deadly grace. "Are you certain about this?" Lyrelei asked quietly. "These pirates are experienced fighters." "I'm sure," Marcus said, his mind already calculating vectors and possibilities. "But I'm not planning to fight them conventionally." Instead of engaging the pirates directly, Marcus guided the Star Whisper into the shadow of the damaged transport ship. The pirates, expecting a straight-up battle, followed predictably, but as they closed in, Marcus executed a maneuver that would have been impossible for any conventional vessel. Using the same quantum folding techniques he'd learned in the Maelstrom, he caused the Star Whisper to phase partially out of normal space. To the pirate's sensors, she simply vanished. Then, using the transport ship's massive bulk as cover, he positioned the Star Whisper directly behind the lead pirate vessel. When they phased back into normal space, the Star Whisper's weapons were already charging. "Surrender now," Marcus transmitted to the shocked pirates, "or I'll disable your ships and leave you drifting until the authorities arrive." Captain Scrix, his composure shaken by the impossible maneuver, snarled into the communication channel. "Tricks and illusions." "We are not frightened by party magic." "It's not magic," Marcus said sadly. "It's just technology you don't understand. Last warning." The pirates opened fire instead of surrendering, their weapons blazing toward the Star Whisper's position, but Marcus was already moving, using micro-jumps through folded space to appear in seemingly random locations around the battlefield. Each time the Star Whisper emerged, her precision weapons disabled key systems on the pirate vessels. Engines, weapons, life support. Within minutes, all three pirate ships were drifting helplessly, their crews alive but powerless to continue their attack. "Impossible," Scrix whispered from his darkened bridge. "What are you?" "Someone who believes children shouldn't suffer for the failures of adults," Marcus replied. "Now get out of here before I change my mind about letting you go." The pirates, their ships badly damaged but still capable of limping away, fled the system with remarkable speed. Marcus turned his attention to the transport ship, opening communication channels to coordinate rescue efforts. The Korthak captain who appeared on their screen was nothing like Marcus had expected. Instead of the brutal warrior he'd been told to expect, he saw a being worn down by exhaustion and desperation, his reptilian features marked by stress and grief. "I am Captain Thurok of the refugee vessel Distant Hope," the Korthak said wearily. You saved us, but why? Humans and Korthak have no treaties, no alliances." "We don't need treaties to help people in trouble," Marcus replied simply. "Your ship is badly damaged. Can we assist with repairs?" Thurok's yellow eyes widened with disbelief. "You would help us? Even knowing what my people have done to yours in the past?" "You're refugees with children aboard," Marcus said. "That's all I need to know." Over the next several hours, the Star Whisper worked alongside the damaged transport, her advanced systems quickly repairing the worst of the damage. Marcus coordinated the efforts while Lirelei and Zira distributed supplies and medical aid to the most vulnerable passengers. As they worked, Thurok shared his story. The refugees were fleeing a civil war that had torn their homeworld apart, seeking sanctuary on a distant colony world. They were farmers and teachers and artisans, not the raiders Marcus had been warned about. "My people have a saying," Thurok said as his ship's systems came back online. Actions reveal character when words cannot. Today you have shown us character we thought existed only in legends. Maybe it's time to start writing new legends, Marcus suggested. Ones where different species help each other instead of fighting. As the Distant Hope prepared to continue its journey, its captain made a formal declaration that was broadcast to every refugee aboard. Let it be known throughout Korthak space that the human Marcus Chen is a friend to our people. Any who harm him or his allies will answer to the survivors of the Distant Hope. Watching the transport ship disappear into hyperspace with its precious cargo of children and families, Marcus felt a profound sense of satisfaction. This was what the Star Whisper was meant for, not just exploration, but building bridges between species that had never trusted each other before. You continue to amaze me, Lyrelai said softly, standing beside him on the observation deck. Today you proved that humans possess something our galaxy desperately needs. The courage to show compassion even to former enemies. The children didn't choose to be enemies, Marcus replied. And maybe if enough people start thinking like that, the adults won't choose to be enemies either. Zira, who had been unusually quiet during the rescue, finally spoke up. The first navigator would have been proud, she said simply. Today you became the bridge between worlds that she always dreamed of, looking out at the stars that seemed to shine a little brighter after their victory. Marcus realized that his role as ambassador was already beginning. Not through formal negotiations or political treaties, but through simple acts of decency that proved the universal nature of compassion. The galaxy was vast and full of potential conflicts, but it was also full of opportunities for understanding, and with the Star Whisper as his partner and the Etherian as his V6 months later, Marcus stood on the bridge of the Star Whisper, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. The blue marble hung in space like a precious jewel, its familiar continents and swirling clouds stirring emotions he hadn't expected to feel so strongly. Nervous? Zira asked from her customary perch among the navigation crystals. She had grown noticeably in the months since their first meeting, her wings now capable of supporting short flights around the ship's corridors. Terrified, Marcus admitted with a rueful smile. It's one thing to represent humanity to aliens I've never met. It's another thing entirely to represent aliens to humanity. Lyrelai approached from her meditation alcove, her violet eyes warm with understanding. You will do well, she said confidently. You have already proven yourself to dozens of species across 3 sectors. The reputation of Marcus the Bridge Builder has spread farther than you know. It was true. In the months since the rescue of the Distant Hope, word had spread through the galactic community about the human who traveled in an Etherian ship, offering aid without agenda, and finding peaceful solutions to conflicts that had raged for generations. Requests for mediation came regularly now, from trade disputes between neighboring systems to territorial conflicts that threatened to escalate into war. Each successful intervention had added to Marcus's growing legend, but more importantly, it had changed how other species viewed humanity. No longer were humans seen as aggressive newcomers to be watched with suspicion. Instead, they were beginning to be recognized as potential allies, beings whose natural empathy and creative problem-solving could benefit the entire galactic community. Incoming transmission from Earth, the Star Whisper announced in her melodious mental voice. United Earth Council requesting communication. Marcus took a deep breath and accepted the transmission. The face that appeared on the view screen belonged to Secretary General Chen Wei, a distant cousin he'd met only a few times at family gatherings. Her expression was carefully diplomatic, but he could see curiosity and amazement beneath the professional facade. Marcus, she said simply, when we lost contact with you 6 months ago, we feared the worst. Now you return in an alien starship, claiming to represent something called the Etherian Consortium, and half the galaxy seems to know your name. Perhaps you could explain what exactly has been happening. Marcus glanced at Lyrelai, who nodded encouragingly. It started with a lonely little girl and a spinning toy, he began, and then told the whole incredible story. Secretary General Chen listened without interruption, her expression shifting from skepticism to amazement to something approaching awe. When Marcus finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You're saying that an act of simple kindness led to humanity being offered membership in an advanced galactic civilization? Not just offered, Marcus corrected. Earned. The Etherian have been watching us for years, waiting to see if we possessed the qualities they valued. Compassion, curiosity, The ability to see beyond our own immediate interests. We passed their test. And now you want to arrange formal first contact between our species? I want to arrange something better than that, Marcus said. I want to show Earth what's possible when we stop thinking in terms of us versus them and start thinking in terms of what we can accomplish together. The conversation continued for over an hour, with Marcus answering questions about Etherian technology, culture, and intentions. Gradually, he could see understanding dawning in the Secretary General's eyes. This wasn't about conquest or exploitation. It was about joining a community of civilizations that had learned to work together for mutual benefit. We'll need time to prepare, Secretary General, Chen finally said. The people of Earth will need to be informed gradually, carefully. The shock of learning we're not alone in the universe. We understand, Lyrelay interjected, speaking for the first time during the conversation. The transition can be managed at whatever pace your people find comfortable. We have waited millennia to find worthy partners. We can wait a little longer to do this properly. After the transmission ended, Marcus found himself alone on the observation deck, staring down at the world of his birth. So much had changed since that day when he'd given a spinning toy to a lonely alien child. He'd gained a ship, learned to navigate between stars, made friends with beings from species he'd never known existed. But perhaps the most important change was in how he saw the universe itself. It wasn't a hostile place full of threats to be feared, but a vast community of different voices all trying to find their place in the cosmic choir, and humanity, with all its flaws and contradictions, had something unique to contribute to that symphony. Second thoughts? Zira's voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to find her floating in the air nearby, her gossamer wings catching the light from Earth's sun. Just reflecting on how far we've all come. The Council has made a decision, she announced, settling gracefully onto the deck beside him. They want to offer you a formal position as Ambassador Extraordinary between the Etherian Consortium and the human species. That sounds very official. It is, Zira grinned, an expression that still looked wonderfully alien on her delicate features. It comes with a salary, diplomatic immunity, and your own permanent embassy ship. Let me guess, the Star Whisper? She would be insulted if you chose anyone else, Zira laughed. Besides, you two have become quite the team. The way you work together in crisis situations has impressed even the High Council. Marcus looked around the ship that had become his home, feeling the gentle presence of her consciousness at the edge of his thoughts. The Star Whisper had indeed become more than just a vessel. She was a partner, a friend, a bridge between his human nature and the vast wonders of the galaxy. There's one condition, Zira continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. You'll need an aide familiar with galactic protocols and diplomatic procedures. I suppose you have someone in mind. Me, Zira exclaimed, her wings fluttering with excitement. Mother says I'm ready for real responsibility, and the Council agrees that having the first Navigator's heir as your deputy would send an important message about how seriously we take this alliance. Marcus smiled, remembering the lonely child he'd first encountered hiding behind shipping containers. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have watching my back. Over the following weeks, as Earth slowly adjusted to the reality of alien contact and formal diplomatic processes began, Marcus found himself busier than ever. There were protocols to learn, treaty frameworks to establish, cultural exchange programs to design, but through it all he never forgot the simple truth that had started everything. Kindness was a universal language. Compassion transcended species boundaries, and sometimes, the smallest gestures created the biggest changes. The spinning gyroscope still sat in a place of honor on Zira's desk in the embassy quarters they'd established aboard the Star Whisper. It had become something of a symbol among the diplomatic corps, a reminder that the most important negotiations often happened not in conference rooms but in moments of simple human connection. As Marcus watched Earth and the Etherian homeworld exchange their first official diplomatic messages, he thought about all the children on both worlds who would grow up in a universe where their species were friends rather than strangers. They would explore the stars together, learn from each other's cultures, face the challenges of an infinite cosmos as partners rather than competitors. It had all begun with a lonely child, a simple toy, and a human's instinct to show kindness to someone who needed it. But it was becoming something magnificent, a bridge between worlds, built one act of compassion at a time. The Star Whisper hummed contentedly around him, her consciousness bright with satisfaction at having finally found her true purpose. They had become exactly what the first navigator had dreamed of, proof that the universe was vast enough for everyone, and beautiful enough to share. And in the endless dance of stars beyond the viewports, Marcus could see infinite possibilities spinning like gyroscopes in the cosmic dark, waiting for the next kind hand to set them in motion. Guides, Marcus was ready to explore them all.